Hello, everyone. My book that I chose was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Uh, it's a pretty quality book, uh, 13 chapters in all. And it was written by, obviously, Sun Tzu, who was a warrior philosopher in China, 5th century BC, so quite a long time ago. And it's been used throughout history for military strategy, and as of recent, many MBA and many high-level executives have read it and tried to use it and basically adapt it into the business realm. It was a very straightforward read. As you can see from the chapters here, there's not even really a table of contents, you know, or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward. Down here. Um, Very hard to tell, but yeah. So just starts right into the chapters. It's a very easy read, very straightforward, almost like a instruction manual for how to be effective while in war. Um, at 13 chapters in all. I personally think it's really great. The author Sun Tzu basically stated that it was vital to the state, and what he meant by that was if they weren't adhering by this book and getting all of their affairs in order before going to war, that it would lead to destruction of the state. And this book deals with mainly how to manage your army, whether how to move it through different terrains, and when to attack, when to retreat, when to hold fast. There's when you're making camp, where do you make camp, depending on what type of region you're in, whether it's a mountainous region or in a valley or things like that. So it is a little bit dated in the sense that the in the sense that obviously 5th century BC, there's no modern technology, right? So there's no drone, there's no heck, there's not even guns. You're lucky if they have a bow and arrow. So it's a pretty neat book, but it has become harder and harder to adapt into the modern world just because things have changed quite frequently. I will say this much: there were three chapters that I liked the most. Hi, I would also like to state that the book's best chapters to me are 7, 8, and 9, and I think they're just the most relevant for a business executive because it's chapter 9 is I don't know if you could see it. I'm trying to get a good picture here. Army of the March, which is just how you're navigating your team, right? So whether it's an army or whether it's a just a group of people that you're working with, it's definitely good to look at. The other one is variation in tactics, just another thing dealing with people and how to plan around stumbles and pitfalls that may be coming up, and maneuvering, which even today you have to do with your employees. Uh, Put them in the positions to succeed, and you as a whole will succeed. So just to finish summarizing the book of The Art of War, it's a great read. Um, Something that not the whole book is easily translatable into today's world, whether it be military or the executive world, but there still is a very good book to read in the sense that it gets you to think of your team as a military team and sets you up with some basic examples of how to set them up for success, even when the stakes aren't quite as high as losing your men, if you make a wrong decision. So now on to the three important takeaways from this book. Uh, One important takeaway is that and just learning from reading the book is that you need to read every text, and you may not get the book may not be relevant for everything, but there are three or four main chapters in the book that are really good for a business executive, and I highly recommend that you read just those at a minimum. And that's chapter 7, 8, and 9. And those are the ones that I deemed kind of as the most important ones that you would have to read. We kind of brushed over it a little bit. Chapter 9 focuses on the need for flexibility on these responses, and I feel like that's extremely important even in today's day and age. Technology is moving so much faster. Uh, People are moving at much more rapid rates from company to company. So you have to be ready for your team to adjust to anything, any type of stimuli, whether that be somebody leaving the company at a high amount of knowledge. And how do you support that if somebody leaves? The introduction of a new technology. Blockbuster, for example, did not adjust to new technologies such as Netflix and thought it was never going to happen, and look where they are now. So, by all means, you need to really be flexible in your army and how they move and how you adjust them as a leader, right? And you need to be able to respond to certain stimuli in order to be successful and certain introductions to the market. Um, and kind of leading into that, before that was Chapter 8, and Chapter 8 focused on the variations of tactics based on characteristics of where the battle is occurring. Now, your certain battlefield in the executive world may not change as much. However, if your company is moving into a different sector, something they've never done before, they may need to change how they operate in order to be effective by moving into that space. For example, if you were primarily a security company, but now you're doing cybersecurity, you obviously would need to drastically change how the tactics of your team and how they operate, just because it's a completely different realm. Let's see. If you are developing chemicals and there's new legislation that is passed, you need to be able to change some of the tactics and maybe how you create certain chemicals and make them safer according to meet the law regulations or just from a marketing perspective. So you always got to be able to adjust your team and your leadership tactics as well to optimize your team's performance. Um, the last chapter, which is one of the most important chapters that I thought of, was chapter 7, which is focusing how to properly manage and move an army to perform optimally in various battlefields. And I think this is probably the most important one in the sense that it really reflects an individual empathy towards your employees and actually an individual knowledge. And the best executives know all of their members and who is good at what, and make sure that they're put in a position for their team to be effective, the individual person to be effective for the group, but also that the individual's happy and that they're enjoying what they're doing. Because if they're not happy doing what they're doing, eventually they're trying to find another place to work because of the simple fact that you can only work so long based on salary, and eventually there's a deeper, wanting to make sure that you're doing something you like and something that's impactful for the company. So as part of this, I think there was a need to have your favorite quote. Um, and mine is from chapter 7, which states, "Maneuvering with an army is advantageous. With an undisciplined multitude is the most dangerous." Now, what they mean by that is if you are moving an army who is very uniform and is taking a uniform approach towards moving towards some new goal, then obviously you will be advantageous in the sense that you'll be able to accomplish the goal that you're looking for. You never want to be moving a large group of people into chaos, similar to like if there's a fire, something like that, and they tell you to organize and walk out in a straight line. The reason for that is so that way you can actually accomplish the goal of getting out of the building in a timely fashion as opposed to people just running around. Overall, I do think this book is a good read. Uh, Obviously, like I stated before, it was written in 5th century BC, so there are some things that are a little dated, and I wouldn't recommend it, taking the whole book to heart. But certainly, chapter 7, 8, and 9 are just phenomenal books for if you are managing a team, how to organize yourselves so that way you guys are, optimally working towards your goals. Thank you, and have a great day, guys.